What's happening, peeps? goukigod here, and in this video I want to talk about Call of Duty WW2 because that hasn't been spoken about enough in my opinion. Who am I kidding? That's been spoken about by everybody, and I'm probably the last person to speak about it, but I thought I'd throw my 2 cents into the arena because it is a game that I am looking forward to, and I want to tell you why. But there's also some other things which are a little bit concerning, or not hugely concerning, but we'll get into that as well. So I think the general feedback from the community and everybody who got hands-on at E3 has been pretty positive. I don't think I've heard anyone talk overly negative about the game. Most people have been saying how good it is, how refreshing it is, how nice it is to be boots on the ground and go back to a traditional World War II setting. And it's refreshing to see videos from people like Hutch and Drifter where they talk positively about the game and they're looking forward to it. So now that the gameplay trailer has been released and we've seen a lot more information surface from E3, we've also seen a huge amount of gameplay, and we know a lot about the weapons, we know a lot about the score streaks, we know about the new modes. So I want to talk about all of that sort of stuff as well. And I have to say that my initial impression from the gameplay reveal trailer was kind of meh. It didn't blow me away. I thought that the initial trailer that focused on the story mode was way more professionally done, it was better edited, it was just a much more impressive looking trailer than this gameplay trailer. So what didn't I think worked about the second trailer? Well, firstly, I don't think that it showcased anything new, nothing that we haven't seen before. And I think it also showcased some pretty shonky either editing or just the worst aspects of the game. So there was some pretty bad animations, or the way that the camera panned I thought was a little bit clunky. And like I said, what they did show in the trailer didn't really show enough variety. We saw kill streaks, we saw weapons being used, but nothing that we really haven't seen in a previous Call of Duty trailer. Now, something that stood out to me in the gameplay reveal trailer is how much that it's trying to emulate or copy Battlefield 1. Now, maybe that's just my opinion, maybe that's the way that I see it, but there's a few moments in the trailer which I'm going to play in slow-mo against the Battlefield 1 trailer, just to show you how close some of these moments were. So I think the closest one, and the one that really looks like the person who was editing the trailer had just watched the Battlefield trailer and thought, yep, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So the first thing is the bayonet charge. So there's a sequence within both the Call of Duty and Battlefield 1 trailers where the player charges at another player with the bayonet and stabs them to the ground. Now you can see in the Call of Duty trailer the way that this happens, and the enemy that gets stabbed is so close to the Battlefield 1 trailer, even down to the enemy wearing a gas mask. Now, the other elements that are in the trailer that I think are very similar to Battlefield 1 aren't quite as close, and they're certainly not a one-for-one comparison, but there are things that are showcased which are also showcased in the Battlefield 1 trailer. So you've got melee with a shovel, and if I can just point this out for a moment, the shovel goes through the guy's helmet in the Call of Duty trailer. That is some epic superhuman swing of a shovel to go right through a helmet. Anyway, I digress. There's also a flamethrower, and then there's plenty of other sequences that look very similar between the two trailers. So I really feel like with this particular trailer they were just going through the motions, and it doesn't really show anything that we haven't seen, and it doesn't really make the game look that exciting. Thankfully though, watching gameplay from all the various different YouTubers has restored my faith, and I think the game is looking good and it's looking exciting as well. So let's move on to what was confirmed about the game. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is some of the new systems that they've implemented, and Headquarters I think is probably the biggest one that they showcased. Now, Headquarters kind of looks like a Destiny style social area where you can hang out between matches, so I'm not exactly sure how this plays out, and we weren't given a huge amount of information, but it basically sounds like you'll be able to showcase your weapons and your rank to other players, maybe show off some of your cool achievements or some rare skins that you have. So I think this could be really interesting, and personally I think that that's something that Call of Duty has been needing for a long time. The in-between match system, the lobby system, really needed a shake-up, and apparently the lobby system as well is no longer just a simple list, it's going to be a line of every player in the game. I guess kind of like the pre-match lobby screen in Advanced Warfare where you could cycle through all the characters. And I think that's probably something that we're going to see a lot of in World War II. We're going to see an extension of stuff that we saw in Advanced Warfare. And a perfect example of that is firing range. So firing range from Advanced Warfare has returned, but now you can have other players in it. So I believe when you go into the firing range, anyone in the lobby can also join in the firing range, and it may even be competitive as well. It looks very cool. I'm very keen to get my hands on it. I really missed the firing range in subsequent games. It was definitely a nice little feature to try out some of the attachments and weapons that you didn't really have any experience with. Now another system that has changed is creator class is different. It's now called divisions, and this isn't completely different to the way that creator class worked in the past. It's now that you just have different types of characters to choose from. So there's going to be a sniper class, a heavy class, an assault class, and within those specific classes there'll be unique perks which you can level up which only relate to that class. So a little bit like Battlefield, I guess, in that respect. And I guess this is kind of an extension or an evolution of the rig system seen in Infinite Warfare. Something else that looked really cool was the war mode. We actually saw some gameplay, a lot of gameplay at E3 and by people like Drifter and Hutch. And the feedback from this particular mode has been pretty positive. So if you aren't aware of what this mode is, it's an objective-based progression mode. So I guess it's a little bit like Rush from Battlefield, where one team fights to complete an objective and the other team tries to stop them from doing so. If the attacking team achieves the objective, then they move on to the next stage, and so on and so forth until they've won the game. We've had plenty of objective game modes in Call of Duty before, but we've never really had anything like this, and I really think this is going to bring a much needed strategic game mode to Call of Duty. Now I must admit, I've never really been a fan of objective game modes. I've always found them to be quite slow, but based on what everybody has said and the feedback from this one, it's quite fast, it's hectic, you die a lot, so this is something that I'm really looking forward to get my hands on. A couple of other minor things that I've picked up on is the Inspect weapon from Modern Warfare Remastered has made it into this game, which doesn't really affect the gameplay, but it's just kind of a cool feature. And I did hear, or maybe I read somewhere, that there's going to be up to 4 attachments on certain weapons. Now I don't really know how they're going to do that, and I think they're going to have to take some creative liberties and some historical liberties because there wasn't a huge amount of attachments on weapons in World War II, but I think this is an area in which I'm happy for them to kind of bend the truth. Now, from a gameplay perspective, there isn't a huge amount to talk about. The gameplay that we've seen so far just displays a pretty standard sort of boots on the ground experience. I have seen people dolphin diving, but I haven't really seen any other kind of movement mechanics out of the ordinary. I believe that there'll be no dashing. Obviously, there's going to be no boost jumping or double jumping or wall running or anything like that. So for the most part, I think it's going to be a pretty typical boots on the ground experience, which I am totally fine with. The most important thing is it looks really fast paced, and we've only seen a handful of maps, but from what we've seen they look like your typical 3-lane, medium-sized map with not a huge amount of verticality, and again that's something I'm pretty happy with. I always struggled with the highly vertical maps of Advanced Warfare and Black Ops 3 as well to a certain degree, so not having to look at the sky for random enemies that are going to drop in on you I think is going to be a really big improvement for me, at least anyway. So let's talk a little bit about the presentation. I think this is the area where the game falls probably the most flat and is the only area of the game at the moment where I have concerns. I don't have any intel on what game engine the game is using. We know that it's next gen only, but I would say that it's probably most likely that they're using an updated version of the Infinity Ward engine or some sort of iterated version of this engine. And I think this is pretty obvious when you look at certain aspects of the game. They look quite dated. So for instance, death animations still look pretty wonky. They kind of look like the same sort of death animations that we've seen since Call of Duty 4. And when you compare these to a lot of modern shooters, they really stand out as something that's very last gen. I think also some weapons when aiming down the sights look a little low res, or the animation looks a little bit janky. Obviously the game is still in development, so this could be polished up by the time the game launches, but again this is something that I feel kind of looks a little bit last gen. Now that's not to say that the game looks bad, I think it just kind of looks serviceable. It just looks like it looks as good as it needs to. It doesn't really look jaw-dropping, it's not breaking any barriers, it's not blazing any new trails in the graphics department. But like I said, it's still in development, so who knows what the game is going to look like when it launches. Maybe the build that was at E3 was just poorly optimized in this department. One thing that a lot of people have said that is really impressive about the game is the sound design. Now, not having played the game myself, I can't actually say whether the sound design is good or not. I can only go by the gameplay that I've watched on YouTube. And yeah, I guess it kind of sounds pretty cool, but obviously I won't get a true understanding of how good it sounds until I put on my surround sound headphones and make myself slightly deaf. One other thing that I will mention about the presentation, which I kind of felt is odd, is there's not going to be any swash stickers in the multiplayer. Now apparently there are going to be a few, quite sparingly, in the single player, in the campaign, but in the multiplayer there's not going to be any swash stickers at all, no Nazi symbolism. Now the reason for this, at least according to Drifter and his conversations with the development team, is to save costs when they ship the game over to other countries. So obviously a lot of countries in Europe, including Germany, obviously, have banned the use of swash stickers in all kind of media, so it doesn't matter if it's film or video game or whatever, you cannot show it, and it's even punishable by jail time. So normally in the past, what a lot of other games do is they just create a version for that particular region which has the swastikas removed or replaced with some other kind of icon. And I can understand the reason for not wanting to do this because it saves costs, but Call of Duty is a huge franchise and they make millions if not billions of dollars every year. So I don't really know if I buy though we're just trying to save costs on it and if there's some other reason to take them out. No, I personally don't really mind. I understand that it's quite offensive to a lot of people. It doesn't really affect me either way. It's just something that I thought was kind of interesting. So that's pretty much the most important things, the things that stood out to me from watching the trailer and all the gameplay from E3. We didn't really find out too much else about the game. We didn't really find out much about the beta. I think, of course, it's going to be hidden behind the paywall for pre-orders. It seems like this game has a lot of hype, so I'm not really sure if they're going to open it up to the public like they did last time, although I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. The other thing that we don't really know much about is supply drops and microtransactions. I mean, for sure, both of them are going to be in the game, but to what extent we don't know. The developers have kind of hinted that players should be happier with the implementation of supply drops in this game, so hopefully that means that there aren't going to be any game-changing items such as weapons in supply drops, or if there are, the chances of getting them are going to be much higher. But clearly that's going to be something that we'll have to wait to see. I don't have a great deal of faith in Activision. They haven't been particularly good at addressing the community's feedback in recent years. Although World War II is a really good step in the right direction, and Sledgehammer really seem like they're trying to do the right thing by the community. So at this point I think I'm going to be quietly optimistic. But obviously let me know how you guys feel. Has seeing all the gameplay changed your opinion of the game? Are you someone who was completely turned off Call of Duty and now potentially looking at jumping into this year's game? And if not, why? I haven't fully boarded the hype train yet, but I am certainly excited and I'm for once optimistic about this year's game. I'm happy about the historical setting. I'm happy about it being reality based and certainly very happy about it being boots on the ground. But anyway, that's all I've got for you in this video. I want to thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'm out.